allow me to introduce Kamala Harris, the next President of the United States. For the people, for us, Kamala Harris!
You're amazing. Thank you so very much. Please, can we give it up for one of the great leaders of Iowa and America? And you wear so many hats. You wear so many hats, and you just are always a voice for so many people. I'm so honored to have your support, and thank you for everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Confluence Brewery, thanks for taking us in. Oh, that was at the last minute, as you all know, because you're here and you shifted the plan and you came here. And I can't thank Confluence Brewery and all of you enough on a rainy afternoon for being here. I'm very, very touched. And so thank you. I'm Kamala Harris. I'm running for President of the United States. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of my thoughts, and then I'm really looking forward to taking questions because, as you probably heard me say before, I fully intend to win this election. I really do. But part of the measure of our success for me is also going to be that at the end of this process that we are relevant. And in order to ensure that, it is really important to me that I and we listen as much as I talk, especially at this stage of the campaign. So I'm here to listen to you as much as I am to talk. But I'll share with you a couple of thoughts. First of all, can we get a big shout out for NARAL? Yay! There we are. So I thank you for co-hosting this meet and greet, and wow, I just want to thank the leaders of NARAL, and most of whom are volunteers, for the work that they and you do every day, because I think we all know that this is a pivotal moment in the history of our country. It's a moment in time that is requiring us each to look in a mirror and ask a question, that question being, who are we? I think we all know part of the answer to that question is we are better than this. And one of the issues upon which we base that perspective is that right now, and it's not a new moment in America, but it is a highlighted moment, women's access to reproductive health is under attack in America. And we have got to stand firm. We have got to stand firm. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Alabama. You all know what's happening and likely to happen in Georgia and Missouri. And we are not being alarmist when we say women will die. And in particular, poor women and women of color, those who cannot leave where they are, which is in a place where politicians have decided to tell women what to do with their own bodies. They cannot leave where they are in a place where politicians have decided that they know better about what a woman needs than her own physician. And we're at a moment in time then that is requiring us to recognize that these women are going to need our support and our help and their families, because they have a right, of course, to make decisions about their lives. And so many of them will not even be able to leave the state in which they live. NARAL, you're doing that work of supporting these women and helping them in those places and then being leaders around the country. But the access of women to health care is under attack. And many of you may know, my sister Maya and I, Maya's here somewhere, there she is. But you know, we grew up hearing about women's health issues. Our mother was a breast cancer researcher. She was a scientist, and she, from my earliest memories, would come home enraged often about the lack of dignity that women were given, in the healthcare delivery system, in the context of scientific research, in the context of taking women seriously and at their word when they indicate or express what their needs are. And so this issue is all too familiar to me. And it is an issue that not only represents what is right in terms of giving a woman her constitutional right to privacy and to exercising free will and exercising agency. It is not only an issue that is about the health and well-being of women and that we may actually, and women may actually die. It is also an issue about understanding equality. Equality, fundamental aspects of equality. Many of you watched the Kavanaugh hearings. You remember when I asked that question? Is there any law that you can think of that tells a man what to do with his body? And you could see people going all kinds of interesting places with that, right? No, it's about equality. It's a fundamental issue of equality. So I'm going to tell you on this issue specifically, part of what I'm prepared to do is not only continue and join with all of our brothers and sisters in this fight for full reproductive freedom for women, but also I will tell you, after elected, I am prepared to require that as it relates to any state that has a history of restricting a woman's access to reproductive health care, that that state has to clear that law, to clear it for constitutional muster, to clear that it comports with Roe versus Wade through the United States Department of Justice. That's called preclearance. And until that law clears for constitutional muster, it cannot go into effect. Because clearly we need some oversight, constitutional oversight. So we'll play on the defense, but let's also take it on the offense. So, you know, and this is just, you know, this issue is one of the many issues that, for me, I mean, it relates to kind of the issues that people were talking about from the time of my birth. Our parents, Maya and I, our parents met when they were students in the 1960s, when they were active in the civil rights movement. So Maya and I joke that we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full-time marching and shouting about this thing called justice, right? And the fight for justice and equality, we know, is something Coretta Scott King actually told us years ago. The fight for civil rights, for justice, for equality, is a fight that must be fought and won with each generation, right? And when she said it, I think there were 2 points there. One is that it's the very nature of this fight for justice and equality, that whatever gains we make, they will not be permanent. It's the nature of it. So the second point then is, knowing it's the nature of it, do not despair. Do not be overwhelmed. Let's not throw up our hands when it's time to roll up our sleeves, right? So on this fight for women's reproductive freedom, this is one of those things where we just get to work and we do what needs to get done on the defense and on the offense. But there are so many other issues right now at play as well, right? So I'll tell you, you know, that same mother of ours, she was 5 feet tall. But if you ever met our mother, you would have thought she was 7 feet tall. And she was fierce. And she was the kind of parent who, if you ever came home complaining about something, our mother would look at you, perhaps one hand on her hip, and with a very straight face, she would ask, well, what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. There you go. There you go. And let's talk about what's at play right now. So we've got this guy in the White House currently. Okay? Okay? And he talks about how he's going to make America great again. But what I would suggest is that he has actually betrayed America. He ran on a platform that said, farmers, I'm going to take care of y'all. Well, I don't need to tell Iowa that this so-called trade policy, trade by tweet, has resulted in Iowa farmers, some whom are looking at bankruptcy, those who had cultivated a market over at least the last decade in China to sell soybeans. Those soybeans are now sitting rotting in bins. I don't need to tell you how he betrayed people when we're looking at the fact that it is very possible that as many as 700,000 auto workers in the United States may lose their job by the end of the year. Let's talk about betrayal of American families when, because of that so-called trade policy, which I call the Trump trade tax, American families right now are spending $1.4 billion a month more for everything from shampoo to washing machines. It's not about make America great again. He wants to take America backward. And we're prepared to turn the page. We're prepared to turn the page. And to turn the page, we're going to need to prosecute the case against 4 more years of this administration. And so as a former prosecutor, I will share with you, I'm here to teach you and tell you about part of my background. I have a background where successfully I have prosecuted the big banks who preyed on homeowners, prosecuted pharmaceutical companies who preyed on seniors, prosecuted transnational criminal organizations that preyed on women and children. And I will tell you, we have a predator living in the White House. And the thing about this person is he's got predatory instincts and a predatory nature. Because let me tell you a secret about predators. They prey on the vulnerable. They prey on those who they assume are weak. They prey on those who they assume are desperate. And the thing about predators is this: they're cowards. And what we need and want in our America is a president of the United States who recognizes that her strength derives from an ability not to beat people down, but lift people up. Lift them up. And so look at the rap sheet on this case. Let's look at the rap sheet, shall we? So let's look at the fact that promised working people that they be helped, but then he passes a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations. You look at the Trump trade tax. You can look at what's happening in terms of, yet again, continuous attempts to take health care from American families, including reviving pre-existing conditions as a ban on getting access to health care. You look at the fact that there are children in cages and they're separating children from their parents in the name of border security, when in fact what that is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. There's plenty of evidence to prosecute this case. But let's also talk about the fact that what is before us right now in this election is not only about that. It's also about the future of our country. It's also about the future of our country and fighting for this country we love. Tomorrow we will celebrate our nation's independence. Tomorrow we will reflect, as hopefully we do always, on the fact that we are a nation who derives its greatest strength from the fact that by our very nature, we are aspirational. We are a nation that was founded on noble ideals. The ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and those words we spoke in 1776, that we are all equal and should be treated that way. We are aspirational. We're also clear-eyed. We've not yet reached those ideals, but the strength of who we are is we fight to get there. And so fight we will, and fight we must. And let us be clear. This is a fight that is born out of optimism. This is a fight that is born out of seeing and knowing what can be and believing in that, unburdened by what has been. This is a fight that is born not only of knowing we must fight for the soul of our country, but a fight born out of love of country. And this is a fight, therefore, for our America and the America we believe in. The America we believe in, because we believe that working people should be able to get through the end of the month without worrying about how they're going to pay their bills. We believe in an America where you only have to work one job to have a roof over your head and put food on the table. We believe in an America where teachers are paid their value. We believe in an America where women are paid the same as men. We believe in an America where women will always have access to reproductive health. We believe in an America where no child of ours has to attend a hearing to determine whether they should hide in a closet because of a gunman roaming the halls of their school. We believe in an America where everyone is given dignity and is treated with equality and fairness. And that is why we will continue to fight. And as we march toward this election in 2020, with and born out of an ultimate and fundamental belief that we are all in this together, and that we all rise and fall together, and that the power is in the people, with all that in our hearts and our souls, I promise you, Des Moines, we will win this election. We will win.
Okay, do you want to take some questions now? Okay, let's take some questions. Shall we go with Katie here? Do you have a question?
Hello, my name is Katie, and I am an undecided Iowa Democrat. I'm excited to be here for two reasons. First of all, because I was very impressed with your performance in the debate. It was awesome. And also because I'm just very happy to be in a room with so many pro-choice Iowans. We really don't get together enough. I've personally been an active supporter of NARAL for the past 10 years because about 10 years ago, I found myself facing an unplanned pregnancy. I was a college student at Mount Mercy in Cedar Rapids, and to be totally honest, I'd never really thought too much about reproductive rights because I never thought I would need them. But I do distinctly remember the moment I found out I was pregnant. I had two immediate thoughts. Before the denial and the grief and all those feelings that come later, I remember thinking, I need to have an abortion, and oh, I live in Iowa. I knew that abortion was a controversial subject, but up until that point, I'd never really considered how the controversy would impact the whole trajectory of my life. I remember being really panicked as I was Google searching, is abortion legal in Iowa, and how to get an abortion in Iowa. And I remember just seeing pages and pages of results about all the different ways Iowa Republicans were trying to restrict reproductive rights. Fortunately, I was lucky, and I was able to get abortion care in my home state without having to jump through too many legal hoops. But that feeling, that fear of I know what I need, but I don't know if I'll be able to legally access it, has stayed with me. It's been 10 years now since my abortion, and if I'm totally honest, my feelings about it have kind of fluctuated. Sometimes I'm 100% confident that I made the right decision, and sometimes I'm not that sure. Sometimes I think about it and I'm really happy that I was able to choose my own path, and sometimes I really am sad about the path that I didn't choose. But the one thing that has been constant is that I'm incredibly grateful that I was able to make that decision for myself. The other thing that has been constant is that Republican lawmakers have been trying to take that power away. And that's why, for me, it's essential that the next president of the United States be an individual who's not just pro-choice, but is someone who will be a national leader for the cause of reproductive justice. As you said, I haven't been around quite as long, but I'm very tired of this fight. And I want a president who will not just defend the status quo, but who will do everything in her power to ensure that future generations have access to a full range of reproductive health care. So my question, this is a crowded field where we know defending abortion access is the floor and not the ceiling for candidates. We know that each candidate has promised to veto dangerous anti-choice legislation, but with Roe v. Wade under dire and immediate threat, we need more than that. My question for you is, what is your plan for proactively safeguarding reproductive freedom and locking in these fundamental rights? And what would a Harris administration do that others might not to protect reproductive choice? Thank you.
I'm in awe of your courage to speak, really. It's to speak in this venue with all who are here and with such grace to tell your story that is a very personal story and is a story that many women in America can tell, but you have a special ability to have the confidence and the courage to speak it in a room like this, and those truths need to be heard by everyone. So I first just want to thank you for that. I really do. So, you know, listen, first of all, I think what I'm offering in terms of pre-clearance is something that no one has talked about or offered before. It's a new approach, and maybe it comes from the fact that in my background, I was for 2 terms the Attorney General of California. I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. I will also tell you, in terms of my background, you know, I shared with you that my parents were active in the civil rights movement. Well, what inspired me to want to become a lawyer was actually those lawyers who were active in the civil rights movement. It was Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley. It was these individuals who understood the skill and the power of the law to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country and ensure that people who deserve full equality under the law receive it. That's why I wanted to be a lawyer, to make sure that happened. And so it is through that lens that I actually do think of a number of issues, including this issue, which is let's continue with our activism. Let's continue to take it to the streets. Let's also do what we need to do around litigation against these bad laws. But let's also, from a proactive position, think about how this is a fundamental issue of justice. And in that way, that's how I think about the role of the United States Department of Justice, which is why I'm saying in a Harris administration, we will have pre-clearance requirements for any state that infringes on a woman's access to reproductive health care if they have a history of doing that. So that is a new and a different approach. I will also tell you that for me, this is not a new issue working on this. I have been working on women's access to reproductive health care for a long time. Throughout my years as Attorney General, for example, when there were laws that were being passed and legislation that was being passed in any way that would restrict a woman's access, including issues like parental consent. I have always been front and center in being an advocate on what we need to do to make sure that we don't infringe on a woman's ability to make decisions. So this is not a new issue for me, and it is something I will always work on. And again, it goes back to what I shared at the beginning. You know, I was born and grew up in a family and a household where women's health issues were, my mother had 2 goals in her life. Let me just tell you this. She had 2 goals. One goal was to raise her 2 daughters. Other goal was to end breast cancer. Like, literally, and she was a good cook, but like, there was not much else happening in our household. So it's really fundamental to me. And again, to the earlier point, it's about civil rights, it's about equality, it's about health, it's about well-being. Let's talk about poverty. So one of the other initiatives that I'm offering that is new in this campaign is around equal pay. Okay? So, but let's talk about that for a moment in terms of, if I can, I'll just offer the segue into that by saying that it is really well established that in places and countries where there is a restriction on a woman's access to reproductive health care, it is coexistent with that women do not have economic health and well-being. These are interrelated in a very direct way. So I think about it in terms of all associated issues, right? And so then moving over to the equal pay issue. So do you know, I'm sure many do here, the Equal Pay Act, anybody know when that was passed? 1963. So since 1963, we acknowledged, it got passed, right? So we acknowledged women are not being paid equal to men for equal work in 1963. Fast forward to the year of our Lord 2019, women are paid 80 cents on the dollar. Black women, 61 cents. Native American women, 58 cents. Latinas, 53 cents. So, right? So, kind of done, right? Like, we don't need the issue of equal pay in terms of is it real, is it a fact? That's well established. So, what are we going to do about it? Here's what I'm proposing, again, just to give you a sense of how I think about things. Let's go on the offensive in addition to what we need to do on the defenses. So, here's what I'm proposing. So also back to the point of your story. The way we should always think about public policy, I believe, is how does it impact a real person? Like, you can have an intellectual discussion, you can have these fancy discussions about all this, but how does it really impact a real person? So equal pay, here's how that kind of works. So let's say Sue is working next to John, and their cubicles are next to each other. And then maybe one day they're hanging out at the water cooler and John's talking about what he got his kids for the holidays, and Sue's like, my kids didn't really get that stuff. And then maybe she goes out the window and looks out in the parking lot and sees that, oh, John's driving a new car. My car is like a good 10 years old. So she thinks, I'm going to go to the supervisor and find out what's going on here. I have a hunch. So asking the supervisor, are we making the same amount? Supervisor will probably say, I can't talk to you about salaries. So then maybe she goes to the EEOC, goes to the Equal Employment Office. I have a hunch here. Well, can you prove it? What you got? Putting the onus on her to prove the situation. And maybe she might even take it so far that she wants to take it to litigation. She's going to have to come out of her own pocket for a lawyer. This working woman has to prove, the burden's on her to prove she's not being paid equally for equal work. Kind of done with that. So let me tell you what I'm going to do and what I'm prepared to do. Shift the burden to the corporation. But there's more. So, this is turning into a 3 o'clock infomercial. So, but there's more. So, requiring them to post on their website. Are they paying women equal for equal work? So you know how restaurants get ratings and stuff like that? It's going to be on their website. And, because there is more, and until they reach equity, what will also happen to give positive encouragement and also to create some kind of accountability, for every 1% differential between what they are paying men and women for equal work, there will be a fine of 1% of their previous year's profits. That'll get their attention. That'll get their attention. So again, the way under a Harris administration that I think about some of these issues is that it's been around for so long. And we're going to have to the point of your question, what will be the new approach? In addition to everything that has worked, let's also think about how we leverage the power we have in a way that is designed to achieve the goal. Not just talk about it, but actually get there. So thank you.
Amazing. And a plan for all of it, which is great. Okay, we have time for more questions. I see some Save the Children people right here. Don't you think we need to call on the Save the Children people here? Who's going to represent? You're representing?
I'll represent. My name is Jeff Bakke, and I'm an advocate for Save the Children Action Network. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us on this beautiful rainy day. And we have three main concerns, and one of those is that there's inadequate access to early childhood education for kids. 40% of kids in this nation do not have access to quality childcare, and that transitions for many, many years into a difference in our country. Secondly, there are 20% of the kids around the world live in conflict zones, and we're highly concerned about what our country is doing currently and can do to look out for the needs of kids worldwide. And then thirdly, certainly our current reality on the U.S.-Mexican border. We're concerned about that kids are held in the conditions they are for longer than is legally appropriate. And so we are wondering what you would do as senator currently, and then as our next president, to invest in kids, to look out for the needs of kids and young families.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Let me start by just saying that I strongly believe that you should judge a society based on how it treats its children. Period. And often through my career, I know Jean mentioned this in the introduction, I was the elected district attorney for 2 terms in San Francisco, then I was attorney general for 2 terms, and obviously now in the United States Senate. I have always, when talking with my team about a policy initiative or something we're going to do, I have always said, okay, sit back, and it could be any subject. And I have said, okay, tell me how this is going to impact a child. Because it's an interesting analysis. When you start to think about any issue, it could be the future of work, it could be climate crisis, it could just name the issue that seemingly has nothing to do with children. And if you ask how your perspective on that issue will impact a child, it will tell you a lot about how it's going to actually play out and if it's good or relevant or not. So I can't thank you enough for the work you do. So specifically, back to your point, under a Harris administration, it's going to be, you can look at my track record. So when I was Attorney General running the California Department of Justice, I created what I think is the first in the nation. In the California Department of Justice, I created what I named the Bureau of Children's Justice. And the reason is, in a state of 40 million people, I was looking around at what is happening in terms of who and where is the responsibility for tracking and paying attention to how children are doing. You know, and the thing that has always driven me bananas is that we have a system that basically treats children's issues as small issues. You know why? Because they're small people? I mean, that's ridiculous. Because what we know, thinking people know, is that when you impact the world of a child, you impact the world. And so I can point, I'm not going to go on and on, but I can point to a lot in my background to tell you this is one of my greatest priorities. And it is the way it is through that lens that I think of the world and almost everything I do. And I can go through how I think about everything from gun violence and what we need to do around smart gun safety laws to what we need to do around the climate crisis, all through the lens of a child. And so let's talk about then more specifically, we can talk about, for example, my proposal on teacher pay. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. Yeah, but here's the thing. Many of us have a similar story. Many of us do, of some teacher along the way who convinced us we were special. We weren't particularly special. But they told us we were, and we believed them. And it put us on a path to then being here together to make a decision about who might be the next president of the United States. So one of my plans for what we need to do to fix America is we need to pay teachers their value, knowing that there are two groups of people raising our children. Parents, often with the assistance of grandparents, our aunts and uncles, and our teachers. Yet, teachers are paid on average 11% less than similarly educated professionals. Yet, 94% of the teachers in our public schools come out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. So, part of what I am prepared to do, you know this, and he's looking at himself, and yes, right. And so what I'm prepared to do is to put in place in our nation's history what will be the first federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap. In Iowa, that gap is about $12,200 a year. So let's talk about that. $12,200 a year, that's a year's worth of mortgage payments. $12,200 a year, that's a year's worth of grocery bills. $12,200 a year, that's putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the greatest barriers to our kids coming out of college and entering a profession for which they have a passion. Because if you combine that debt with that salary, there's no way they can pay the bills. So this is one of my proposals. And then I could go on and on and on. But I do want to mention what you talked about also. You had your various points, but the 3 points, but the children at the border. So as you all know, we had the debate in Miami on Thursday of last week. And then the next day, I actually went to a place in Florida called Homestead, Florida. And in Homestead, Florida, there is a for-profit facility that currently houses, 2,700 children. So we get there, and they wouldn't give us access. I am a member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. It's a for-profit institution. All these for-profits need to be shut down, by the way. All of them. All these detention facilities, the private prisons, the private detention facilities, they all need to be shut down. They all need to be shut down. Because here's why. Let's talk about the business model on these private detention facilities. The business model is for certain human beings to profit off the incarceration of other human beings. To profit. And let me tell you what I saw. So they wouldn't let us in. So then we got a ladder, climbed up the ladder, looked over the fence. But let me tell you guys what I saw. So there were 2 lines of kids, girls and boys, lined up in single file, walking into barracks. They were treating these children like prisoners, as though they committed some crime. This is what's happening. And this is the United States government doing this. And immediately on day 1, when elected, I will end it. And I just want to add one more thing to share with you what I saw down there. I also met with parents. So be clear. Some of them arrived as unaccompanied minors, but there are also many of them whose parents are on this other side of that fence I described. Right? And these kids, some of them are being held for like 40 days. So what is that about? Their parents are there, yearning to be with their children. So this is what's happening, and it has got to stop. And it highlights, to the point of your question, there's so much at stake in this election. And back to my earlier point, and there is a case to be prosecuted, and a case that I believe will appeal to most of the people who understand that it is not reflective of the values of who we are, and it is not reflective of our best selves. We can do better, and we are better than this. So.
Thank you. It is hot as blazes in here. Iowa, it's warm. So I think they told me that we have time for one more question. The young lady right back there with the sunglasses on her beautiful striped dress. Yes. How about you? Let's reach way back there. Is it?
Hi, thanks for being here. I actually have two questions, but they're really short. So first, I'm a big fan, and I've been advocating for you with all my friends, but we're hearing a lot about your experience as the Attorney General in California. So how can we talk to people about your record, and when we hear negative things, what should we be saying? And second, I'm sort of thinking about running for school board. Any advice?
I'll start with the first, and then I've got plenty of advice. So, frankly, there are those who would like to put my experience as a prosecutor into a negative and make it a negative. But I'm going to tell you, as a prosecutor, I am very proud of my record. So, first of all, as I've shared with you about my background, I grew up in a community and in a family and in a neighborhood where I was acutely aware from the day I was born about the flaws in the criminal justice system. And I made a very conscious decision, therefore, to become a prosecutor, believing that when we want to reform systems, there is certainly an important role to be played on the outside in terms of advocacy and activism. But why not also be on the inside where the decisions are being made, where you can have the ability to have a voice and potentially a very powerful voice? And so that's why I made the decision. And so I am proud of my record, that I am one of the first elected prosecutors in the country to have started a reentry initiative focused on first-time drug sales offenders and getting them jobs and counseling and support. And it ended up, my program initiative ended up being designated as a model of innovation for law enforcement in the United States. I am proud of the work that I did when I was Attorney General and required my special agents to wear body cameras and keep them on. And I was one of the, I think it might have been the first state agency to do that. I'm proud of the work that we have done, even in my role in the United States Senate, as being a leader on what we need to do to reform the money bail system in America, which means that every day in America there are people sitting in jail waiting for trial simply because they don't have the money for bail, which for me, that means that's not only a criminal justice reform matter, that's about economic justice. But I'll give you more information about all of the details on that, but I am very proud of our record, and I am also never going to run away from the reality also that I also strongly believe if a woman is raped, if a child is molested, if one human being kills another human being, there needs to be serious consequence. And I'm also never going to shy away from that or apologize for that. And so I appreciate you asking the question as a way to have this conversation and air out these issues. Running for office. Okay. So let me tell you, first of all, don't you ever listen to anyone who says you can't win or it can't be done. Okay? Don't hear that. Let me tell you something. I eat no for breakfast. Okay? So let me tell you, when I first ran for this will be your first office? Okay, so when my first office I ran for was DA. And because the incumbent came from an old political family, 2 terms. His nickname is KO because he was known as being a boxer who knocked people out. And everyone was like, oh, nobody's ready for you. It's not your time. It's not your turn. It'll be difficult. It'll get ugly. But I didn't listen, right? And then I got all excited, and we got in the race, and then my first polling numbers came back, and I started out at a very healthy 6 points in a poll, which, of course, is 6 in 100. And, but I knew if we could get to 12, we could win. And then let me tell you how we campaigned. I would campaign with my ironing board. Okay, so y'all are looking, what is this about, Kamala? Where are you going? Let me tell you about my ironing board. And you have an ironing board, too. Let me tell you about your ironing board. So I would grab my ironing board. I would grab a roll of duct tape, my posters, and my literature. And I'd take them all, get in my car. Then I'd drive to the local grocery store. Then I'd pull out my ironing board and my duct tape and my posters and my literature, and I'd walk to the front of the grocery store, and I'd open up my ironing board. Because you see, an ironing board makes a really great standing desk, right? And then with the duct tape, I'd tape my posters so that people walking by would see the posters, and I'd have my literature on top, and then I'd require people to talk to me as they walk in and out of the grocery store. And that's how you do it. And that's how you do it. But go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Nicole, do you want to say anything to people about?
Thank you again. NARAL was so happy to co-host this, and we're just so thrilled to be here with you.
Okay, good. I want to come and say hi to everybody. Okay. Hi. How are you? I'm Kamala.
I know.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Hi, girl. I see a woman president. What's your name? Lillian. Nice to meet you. And what's your name? Mia. Nice to. How do you spell Mia?
M-I-A.
My
Your sister's name. We caught that.
Mia.
Yeah.
Hi.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Thank you very
Hi.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Beat Trump. We're going to do this. It's going to be hard work, but we're going to do it. Hi. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Can we open this up for me? We come in this way.
Makes you genuine.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Hey,
Can we open this up?
hi. I have something for
Can
you
we
to
open this
prosecute.
up for me?
Okay.
I'll take your housing. Yeah, so that's my card. We got taken over by a venture capitalist that doubled our rent, raised our rent 69%.
You know, I have a whole initiative on rent also. The Rent Relief Act. So if families are paying more than 30% of their income in rent plus utilities, they get a tax credit. So we should follow up to get you some information on it.
And my ask from you is, we've had Cindy Axby came with Sherrod Brown. Joaquin Castro came a few weeks ago. If you got 15 minutes sometime to drop by.
Well, let's figure out how we can follow up on that.
Yeah, we will. Actually, we live right down the road.
Okay.
Senator Harris,
Thank you so
Please.
much.
Yeah,
for your activism.
please give us as much information as you can on your website. We need to know the details for those people who have come down to 2 or 3 Democratic candidates. I'm a 67-year-old physician who lost her job at the age of 65. And I love Medicare for all.
Yeah.
But I need to know the details of the plan.
Yeah.
Rural Iowa can't lose its hospitals and
And that is
clinics.
part of it.
And farmers need to know what's happening in the environment.
Yeah.
As much detail as you can.
Sure. Okay, let's follow up on that. Yeah.
Love your energy. Love your effort.
No,
Thank you so
On
much.
Medicare
It's
for
just
all,
Milwaukee
I'll make
State.
sure we do because it is very much part of my priorities.
Yes,
That we lift up because I
yes,
know the
and mine
hospitals are
too.
shutting down.
Yes.
And I know that, and part of it is
I've
the whole
had a
structure.
procedure and saw what Medicare paid, and it didn't pay for the staff that took
Yeah.
care of me.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
there
we'll
has to
follow
be
up
a
on
middle
that.
ground.
Okay, we'll follow up.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm glad you're here. How you doing? Thank you for being here.
I drove 5 hours to be here today.
You did?
Yes, yes.
What's your name?
Sarah.
Kamala. Thank you, Sarah.
Absolutely. We were day 1 donors.
Or maybe it's good. I think
Thank you. That means the world to me.
As an interracial couple in the Midwest, don't forget us. We need somebody to lead us into the modern era. People
I
here
agree
are just
with you.
stuck.
I agree. We're
just
going to
need
do
to
it. We're role models.
Hang with Dieter DeGear.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Hang
Be
with
well.
Dieter DeGear. She's gonna
Thank you so much.
This was wonderful. I was really impressed with the debate, and I was very torn and wasn't sure who I was going to caucus for here in Iowa, because that's a big deal for us. And you've solidified it, so I just want to thank you so much.
Oh, I'm honored.
I really appreciate
What's your name?
it. Alex. I'm a high school teacher here.
Oh,
And
great.
high school teachers are often forgotten. A lot of people
know.
talk about pre-K and Smart Start.
I know.
And they talk about college, and we are totally forgotten secondary schools.
That's why I was a teacher. Hey, very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Oh, can we? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I've got one here. My name is Lisa, and I'm a middle-aged cynic. Oh, but you're making me believe that we can turn this around. Can you sign my arm? I know it's crazy. Do you want a poster? No, I'm good. Okay, thank you. I know, but you're making me feel like
we have to fight.
I know we do.
There's a lot to fight against.
I know. But look, we're strong.
I know. We're
I
strong.
know. We can do this. I feel like we can do it.
Hi, nice to meet you, John Olson.
Kamala Harris.
So I'm actually a member of the League of Women Voters.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know that yesterday was the 100th anniversary of Iowa ratifying the 19th Amendment.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Yesterday was the 100th anniversary of Iowa ratifying the 19th Amendment.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, who's your favorite suffragist in history? or who's your favorite historical figure who's not a president?
Shirley Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm. All right. Cool.
Thank you for asking and for your activism.
Can I get a picture?
Yes.
Take it for you?
We can shoot it for you. Come on.
There we go. Got it. There we go. Thank you so much, John. Hi. Hi. He said hi again. Say it again.
Can you sign this?
Pull me back.
We want to go that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, no, you're
Can you
fine.
sign this?
Senator,
Thank you so much.
next time they ask you about health care, could you please check them when they say that private health insurance is going to go away?
Yes.
That's not, I mean,
I know. It's
the insurance companies are going to be there if there's a buck to be made. We just want health insurance. Please check them, because I just heard Chris Cuomo say it last night on TV again. Like,
it's been
that's not
frustrating.
what's going to happen.
I know that. I agree with you, and it's been frustrating. Yeah. What's your name?
My name's Dan Ryan.
Kamala Harris.
I tell you,
Thank you.
my nieces and nephews asked me at the end of the election last year, well, who are you going to support? Smart Uncle Dan, and I said Kamala Harris. This is way before you decided to.
Oh, yeah.
So
They love you for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That really
she'll-
means a lot.
Yeah.
That
she'll
really
attest
means a
that.
lot. Thank you. What's your name?
My name is Jane Ryan.
Jane and Dan Ryan. Thank you both. That really means a lot. Thank you.
please check them on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi.
My name's Abby. I'm a first-time voter, and I'm in a lot of leadership roles and in different clubs, and you're such a huge role model.
That's great. I'm glad
Can
you're
I
so
take a
active. Of course.
picture?
Here.
Thank you.
Here you go.
And another one behind you.
Hi. I'm Katie Burrell.
Kamala, you like my teacher comment.
I did. We actually watched you on the Kavanaugh hearing in my classroom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I teach speech, public speaking, and so we watched it and we debated it in my classroom.
Oh, really?
So it was very interesting.
Really?
And they asked me, and I said, I'm not going to tell you what I think.
What age are you teaching?
I teach 9th grade.
Oh, that's great.
So it's very interesting to see what they and we had different every class.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
Yeah. Well,
Because we do discussions every week. And so
well,
that was
no,
so
your
much
students are like witnessing all kinds of history.
Oh, it was
sadly
awesome.
some of it.
Yeah. So
Here, come on. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right here.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for coming, and I love hearing your ideas, and I'm swinging your way, girl.
Well, I hope to earn your support.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Well, if we could get a picture, the three of us, that'd
Yes.
be awesome.
Come on. Oh, who's there, right?
Right here. Three. I love that. I didn't bring a pin.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a huge fan. So before I moved to Iowa, I was doing a service here in Baltimore, and my service site was actually an immigrant refugee service. So thank you so much for what you're doing for immigration and for the kids. So I hope you keep fighting for them.
Well, we're all going to keep fighting.
Yeah, definitely.
They need our voices. They've got little voices right now. We need to lift them up.
They need to scream the loudest.
Yeah.
So,
That's great. What are you doing now?
I work at VoteSmart, which is a I'm not sure if you've heard of us, but so I'm one of their researchers. And,
oh, good.
So
get everybody out there.
Yeah, well, those facts. So,
thanks for being such a great leader.
Picture, of course, yeah.
Here, I can take it for you, and then we're gonna.
That's so great.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Can we get a pic of it? Of course we can. Hi.
My name's Emily.
I'm Kamala.
Thank you for being the best. I'm so supportive and a strong woman for women everywhere.
We're going to do it.
Yeah, we're going to show everybody.
All right. One, two, three. Nice.
Thank you.
There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
After tonight, I'm fully committed to you. I was kind of switched up between Mayor Pete and you, but you're a spit ball of fire, and you inspire me. So.
What's your name?
Logan.
Logan.
Yes.
Kamala. Thank you. That you having your support means a lot. Thank you, Logan.
Can we get a picture?
Of course. Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Gail. It's nice to meet you.
You want a picture with her?
Do you have a pen? I didn't bring a pen.
I don't. You have a pen.
Oh, thank you. I'm all wet, so I'm not going to ask for a selfie.
You can even keep that as long as you sign mine.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I really appreciated this. The Time 100. So I want you to sign that.
There's Christine.
Yes. And my little book.
Yeah.
My arthritis. Here, I brought it to you by sign.
Hi, local law
Right
enforcement
here.
officer, and thank you for what you said, because we got to change it from the
Here.
we got to change it from the inside.
I know.
And that's what I tell when I'm trying to get young people to join us.
And then people have to know that
It'll get better from the inside. Yes.
You can actually do so much good work.
Absolutely.
Right?
So thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can she get a picture?
Of course.
Just want to let you know, I think Biden is on the, he knows he's in trouble, and I think Donald Trump, he don't want any part of it. God bless you, President.
Hey everyone, sorry, we've got
President Harris.
I've got to take her. I'm sorry. One last one. We're not sorry. We got to get her out. I'm sorry. I've got to. Sorry.
Which way?
Got it.
Thank you.
Wait, just picture. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Much on the hearings.
Here you have 70 years of education between us.
I'm honored that you're here.
And we're honored to be here. Thank you very much.
We're both ex-educators.
Oh, I don't think educators are ever ex. They're just forever educating. That's why you're here.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Hi, I'm Alina. As a current educator, I thank you for your stance. As a gay woman married to a Hispanic woman from Panama, I thank you for your stance there. And as somebody whose ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence, I thank you for that. I hope that you can do something to protect our LGBTQ kids in school because the curriculum is completely absent and they are not safe.
I know that. I know that. I know that. I know that. And it's something I absolutely think about. And part of it is we need to pass the Equality Act. I'm also on legislation right now about what we need to do to protect our LGBTQ youth. I mean, I've been working on it for years actually, because we had so many runaway youth, as you can imagine.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and they're so vulnerable.
And the rates of suicide and depression is
so
extremely high, especially with our trans kids.
Right, I know. No, thank you, and thank you for putting voice to that. Thank you.
Could I get a picture of face?
She's got it.
Yeah, okay. Can we turn around?
Hi, thank you so much. I love your shoes, by the way. We're totally matching right now. I love it.
Yes,
One, two, three. Got it now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I don't have a story. I'm
Yes, you
an
do.
early supporter,
He's been a
and I
police chief.
continue to be.
You've got a story.
Thank you.
Yeah, and don't let them play any tricks on you, because they're going to.
They will, and they already have tried, but
Yeah.
we're
Senator,
going to fight back.
Okay.
Great.
Hey, Brittany, can you take?
Thank you. Are you coming back when your office opens?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for sure.
I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more here.
Of course. Come on, who's taking it? There we go. Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Hi, Senator. I'm Aaron from Baltimore.
Oh, hi. Good to see you.
See you too.
You going to help us in our Baltimore office?
Trying to do that. Listen, I wanted to ask you. So, I mean, all my life we've been in these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know, we're starting new ones, and my brother's 24. You know, his name's Jared, but these days he goes by Lieutenant. And I just want to know your pledge and your plan to end the wars and make sure that we don't get involved in the wars.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I just was talking earlier about the problem also with what we're seeing with this current president is he doesn't have any appreciation for your brother, meaning the story about the people who actually, and families who are sacrificing so much to have our presence and to fight for our democracy and our freedoms, and you cannot treat that casually. I feel very strongly. I was just literally talking about that earlier today. You know, with this military parade and all that business. Let's talk about how we're treating military families. Let's talk about how we're treating active servicemen and women in terms of how seriously we should take any action that might present them with exposure to loss of life, to injury, because we're engaged in wars and in these endless wars. So thank you for. What are you doing here?
I'm just hanging out, visiting people.
Yeah.
So
That's
thank
great.
you so much. Can I get a picture, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank God.
Got it. Right, you go.
Sorry.
1, 2, 3.
I've got everyone else's, Senator. Gotta have yours.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator, one last one, Senator.
We really don't have time.
Senator.
We're not doing. I'm so sorry. She's not going to sign.
Oh,
right now.
phone.
Come on, let's do Save the Children.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, we would love to get a little video clip of you saying invest in kids. Will you do it? Of course. Oh, fantastic. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Invest in kids.
Thank you.
That's
Thanks
fantastic.
for your leadership.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm Kamala. Nice to meet you. Come on.
Thank you. I'm a teacher. Can I get a selfie real quick? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're a stepmom. I'm a stepmom. This is my stepson. Can we have a quick photo?
How's it going? Yeah?
Do you know what her stepsons call her?
They call me Mama. But you're lucky that you got a buddy here. Yeah, that's how we are.
Thank you so much.
That's how we think. And everyone loves the kids, and that's the best thing.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
I'm part of the Asian and Latino Coalition. I'm hoping that you meet with us soon. We're looking for a candidate to endorse.
Yeah. We've met with the Asian Latino Coalition a couple times so far. Yeah, in October and in February.
You should make sure that you know about it.
Yeah, we'd love to.
I told them, don't let her
I'm
get
sad, but I've been in touch with.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you
Love
so much.
Hi. Thank you so much. Sorry. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Okay.
All right, 1, 2, 3, got it.
Sorry.
Hi, Senator Harris. Nice to see you again. How are you?
I got it.
Yes, nice seeing you again.
Thank you so much very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Shannon.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
What was met today? We were at the Brunton Stadium.
We just met today at the rain
Hey, are you
location.
for the Harris thing? I'll give you a ride. Guys, can I get in?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. I'm caucusing for you. I'm caucusing for you. You bet. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course.
Really?
Hi, we came out from Washington State, and I really hope to see you out there soon.
I'm from Louisiana.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I will.
Are you?
Okay.
Like, you're like
I'll be
my
looking
New
for you.
Orleans?
Yes.
Oh, God. She's from New Orleans, too. Come here. We're out of New Orleans. I'm so sorry. Am I not supposed to touch her?
Here. Here we go.
I don't know.
Here, come on, Brittany.
And then you can get it from her. Great.
That's smart.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah? What? Did you watch the debate?
Yeah, you killed it.
I want to see if you take a picture.
Wait, I was. I can't lie.
I'm so glad to see you. So we're going to keep fighting.
Let's do a
Yeah,
quick
keep
one.
fighting? Yeah? Any tips? What are you thinking about these days? I haven't seen you in like 2 weeks.
We missed you.
I know.
We have quite a bit. You're at leadership camp? Yep.
How'd it go?
It went well.
Any tips for me?
I don't really have any.
Okay. Next time,
I
when
just
you
be
tell
telling
me.
you stuff you already know.
Well, sometimes it's good to hear. Sometimes I think I know, and other times I don't. So then you tell me what you think I should know. Okay, you're going to have to remember that. That's part of our relationship.
All right.
Okay? I'll see you next time? Yep. Yeah? Okay. Be well. I'm always so happy when you're here.
Thank you for the video. That was wonderful.
Oh, of course, of course.
I just want to say quick here. I'm not afraid of record when it comes to
resume. Because if Donald Trump can be there, and then I think you're more qualified to be there. So please don't let anyone shake you off from that. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a photo quick with you.
Yes, of course.
And we'll continue to...
I appreciate you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take a picture.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you so
I
much.
employ 47 veterans for Kamala Harris.
Oh, thank you. What's your name?
Stephen Willis.
Kamala
I'll be one of your
Harris.
caucus chairs.
I really appreciate you, Stephen Willis.
It's a privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That means a lot.
You
That
bet.
means a lot. Thank you.
Stephen,
Good luck.
Hi, thank you.
Can I bother you for an autograph?
Retired nurse. Thank you.
1, 2, got it.
Thank you for your work. Caucus support. You go with. You got it. Thank you.
I'm a California girl now living in Iowa. I'm so proud of you running.
Thank you.
Can we get a quick picture?
Of course. Come on.
I was so excited when I found out you were running.
That timer on it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi.
I got to ask you a question at the CNN
No, I
town
thought
hall.
I was like, I know this person.
I'm the one that asked you how you stay out of his crazy.
I remember you.
You remember that
I
question?
do. That was a good one. You got everyone laughing. I remember
You still
you.
gonna stay out of his crazy?
I am. I feel like I have the.
Alrighty, great. 1, 2, 3, got it.
I feel like I have the crazy inoculation. Like for inoculation against crazy.
I hope so. There's a lot of it.
Of course. Hi. There you go. Thank you so very much. Yes, of course. Come on. Hi.
Could you maybe take a picture?
Oh, I thought you were standing on something.
No.
He has to do
I
a
could do
sorority
this.
squat.
How about we both do something?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
One more photo with Terry, who is still wet from being outside at the park.
You got to make it.
We're gonna make
There
it.
you
We're
go.
gonna
Thank
make
you,
it.
Terry.
We're gonna make it.
Thank
All right,
you.
have a good one. Really great.